Hey folks, Trouble Comics here. How you doing? I was at Glasgow Comic Con and there wasn't many comic dealers there. Yeah, it was all people dressed up like funny animals. And there was a guy and he had a couple of boxes of cheap books and I thought I've never owned a G.I. Joe book in my life. I think it passed me by, maybe because I'm in Scotland, it didn't really appeal to us, but here's issue number 34 of G.I. Joe. Um, There's now got a cloak and dagger there. I've got no idea what G.I. Joe is. Over in the UK, we didn't have G.I. Joe. Well, we probably did. But we had, oh, a nice two-page spread. We had Action Man. And Action Man, I don't think, ever really made any kind of crossover into comic books. But it's Larry Hama, who we knew, is doing the script. Ron Wiggum, pencils, no idea. Andy Mushwinski, Rick Parker. Denny O'Neil was the editor, and Jim Shooter was editor-in-chief. So, it's definitely a very Marvel book. So I imagine that it's really just a sort of adventure story type of thing. American viewers will be super familiar with this, and there is a certain, even though I don't know what G.I. Joe is, there's a certain sort of nostalgia to seeing them, because G.I. Joe seems to be one of those properties that's pretty much part of the zeitgeist, isn't it? It's if even if you don't know what G.I. Joe is, if somebody says to you, well, it's G.I. Joe, you would kind of get an idea. You would have an idea in your head about what G.I. Joe is. There's two birds in our tail. Punch up all the ECM systems and the RBC dispenser. That's the rapid blooming chaff. Rapid blooming chaff. That just doesn't sound healthy at all. I think anything with the word chaff in it is problematic. There's Rocket Raccoon. See, you met him in The Incredible Hulk. No, Rocket Raccoon is his own limited 4 issues of fast-paced fun. There we go. Created by Bill Mantlo. You probably didn't get a penny for it. Yeah. So these comics here, this is at the age when I'm pretty sure Marvel were printing on better quality paper. You can see it's a lot whiter, yeah, than it normally is in the adverts. Don't you just love the adverts? Be shocked. Comics bought and sold. Marvel Comics price list. Missed an issue. Cheap comic. Do you remember there was a time where you couldn't go online and just buy stuff? You had to actually send a letter to the guy saying, "Can you send me your list of books?" And then you send your list out, and then you would be able to buy from his list. Anyway, this is just like non-stop action from start to finish. You can understand why, for a certain demographic, the Adventures of G.I. Joe must have been just like riveting, must read every month stuff. It's exciting, there's lots of jets, there's lots of planes, there's a lot of fighting, and I'm sure the characters were all pretty much well founded, because this book wasn't like a 6-issue mini-series and it got cancelled. This book ran and ran and ran and ran, and from my very limited knowledge of G.I. Joe, I do realise that there was an issue where there was no words. So, and I think that issue is like dead valuable now. I couldn't see it anywhere. And he only had a few, but he let me have them cheap, so that was cool. Here's the hype book box. Star Comics, Superheroes, Secret Wars number 12, the conclusion. There you go. Whatever Spider-Man 1. I've got that book, ROM 65, and a Marvel Index, yeah. Here's a checklist of everything else that was out. You can see that Marvel were doing those kids' comics at this point. Top Dog. Not only can Top Dog talk, but he also leads a secret life. Yeah, I'm sure he does. So, yeah, good old American G.I. Joe action. Here's the letters page. What type of dog is Junkyard? Junkyard is none other than a mutt. And Mark Rubens. Oh, the print's falling off there. Matt Murphy. Hey, Matt Murphy. G.I. Joe. This was terrific. Andrew Woodward. Since I am not much for chit-chat, I'll get to the point. Why is it that you don't have any foreign operations Joes in the force? Yes, good question. Why can't you have an English Tommy? Yeah. Or a deep-sea diver from the Philippines, or maybe an Israeli commando? Topical. Another idea I have for a Joe would be to make a Joe who totes a double-barreled or pump-action scattergun. Call him what else? Shotgun. Well, Drew, since G.I. Joe is part of the United States Army, everyone in it is a US citizen, Drew. That's why there are no British or Israelis other than other foreign troopers helping fight Cobra. Of course, there's always the possibility of an exchange program. Well, that's probably quite enough of that. So there you go, a really beautiful issue of G.I. Joe. I'm glad I got this and picked it up and had a wee look at it, and I hope you did too. If you did, you might want to consider subscribing to the channel. Why would you not? If you like comic books, you should watch this rubbish every day. Subscribe. See you in the next one.